What if the greatest villain in Christian history wasn't a villain at all? What if Judas Iscariot, the man whose name became synonymous with betrayal, was actually following orders not from the Sanhedrin, not from Satan, but from Jesus? What if the crucifixion wasn't a tragic consequence of betrayal, but a divine plan willingly orchestrated and carried out by the one disciple who understood it best? This isn't a blasphemous what if. It's written in a gospel buried for over 1,000 years, and it changes everything. Of course, such a claim isn't meant to be swallowed in one bite. It lingers unsettling, strange, just out of reach. So tonight, we take it slow. We walk through sand, through parchment, through silence and firelight. And we follow a name that has echoed for centuries, all the way back to the cave where Judas speaks again. You've heard his name before, probably in a whisper, probably followed by a wince. Judas, the betrayer, the one who kissed the Son of Man and then sold him for silver. You don't need a Bible to know that story. It's soaked into the floorboards of Western history. Painters captured the moment, the kiss, the silver, the guilt. Poets spat his name. Priests warned against his fate. Even language didn't spare him. A Judas became shorthand for traitor turncoat, false friend. But there's another version, quieter, stranger, and far more difficult to dismiss. In 2006, after centuries of silence, a crumbling leather-bound codex was brought into the light. It had survived grave robbers, smugglers, and the Sahara itself. When finally deciphered, its title struck like lightning: the Gospel of Judas. Not about Judas. By Judas, or at least told in his voice. A gospel that doesn't damn him, but honors him. A gospel where Jesus laughs not at the world, but at his other disciples. Where betrayal is not sin, but sacrifice. Where Judas is the only one who understands what must be done, and does it. Tonight we open that gospel. We won't just analyze it, we'll walk its halls, examine the walls it threatens to crack, and listen to the echoes it resurrects. We'll look at the church's response, the historical context, the hidden threads that suggest this story may not be as fringe as it sounds. And most of all, we'll ask the question that no one dared to ask out loud. What if the villain was the only one who truly obeyed? Before we venture further into the shadows, take a moment to subscribe so you never miss a secret that history has tried to forget. Because this is not a tale of heresy. It's a story about how easy it is to erase someone when they play a part we were never meant to understand. You begin in the sand. Not just any sand, but the parched, ochre-colored dust of Middle Egypt, where the wind speaks in hisses and the stones keep secrets far longer than parchment ever could. Somewhere near El Minya in the 1970s, a farmer digging for limestone stumbled across a buried chamber. It wasn't grand. No golden coffins or towering statuary. Just a weathered box tucked into the earth like a forgotten memory. Inside was a leather-bound codex, fragile, flaking, and utterly indecipherable to the man who found it. He had no idea he'd unearthed a text that would one day whisper in Judas's defense. But secrets don't like to come quietly. The codex changed hands many times in the following decades, bouncing between antiquities, dealers, black market smugglers, and neglected bank vaults. At one point, it was even stored in a freezer, not for preservation, but because no one knew what else to do with it. Its pages, written in Coptic, suffered deeply in the process. Mold, humidity, and neglect nearly erased them. Had it stayed buried another few years, the story of Judas the Savior might have disintegrated entirely. It wasn't until the early 2000s that serious restoration efforts began. The Maecenas Foundation for Ancient Art in Switzerland acquired the codex, and enlisted scholars to painstakingly piece it back together. The pages were brittle as burnt leaves. Some were missing, others were jumbled. But slowly, with careful translation and forensic reconstruction, the words emerged, and with them a shock. This wasn't another copy of Matthew or a lost letter of Paul, or even a forgotten sermon. This was something else, something bold, unsettling, and ancient. A gospel, and not just any gospel. One that named its narrator not in accusation, but in revelation Judas Iscariot. Historically, the idea of alternate gospels is nothing new. Since the early centuries of Christianity, texts have surfaced, claiming to offer untold stories, hidden knowledge, or suppressed revelations. Most are dismissed quickly, either proven to be later forgeries or too fragmentary to consider. But this codex was different. Its language placed it around the 3rd or 4th century. Old enough to matter. More importantly, its content bore the hallmarks of a very specific worldview, one that would make traditional theologians shift uncomfortably in their chairs. Gnosticism. But before diving into that particularly wild pool, it's worth pausing to consider the context of discovery itself. Egypt, oddly enough, has been the cradle for many such unearthings. In 1945, the Nag Hammadi Library, another collection of early Christian and Gnostic texts, was found just a few hundred kilometers from where this gospel lay hidden. It's almost poetic. The very deserts that once exiled these ideas are now the ones delivering them back into our hands. Still, the Gospel of Judas didn't burst onto the scene like a messiah. Its release in 2006 was cautious, wrapped in academic commentary and thick with disclaimer. National Geographic led the media charge, framing it as a fascinating curiosity rather than a theological revolution. Some scholars praised its insight. Others called it a Gnostic fantasy, heretical derivative, or both. And a few predictably just pretended it didn't exist. But it does exist. And in its crumbling pages, Judas doesn't hang himself in despair. He speaks. He reasons. He receives secret knowledge. Jesus calls him apart from the others and tells him things too dangerous to repeat aloud. And eventually Judas acts. Not with malice, not with regret, but with purpose. Of course, not everyone agrees on that reading. Some argue that